I didn't see it coming. Not on Christmas Eve. Not with cinnamon in the air and the house dressed in soft gold lights that made everything look better than it really was. My name is Hannah Parker, I'm 25, and for the last 4 years I've worked full-time as a pharmacy tech at a hospital in Denver, Colorado. I'm the one who makes sure medication orders are exact, that labels are right to the milligram, that dangerous interactions don't slip through because someone's tired at 3 a.m. Precision keeps people safe. It's what I'm good at. It's also how I've kept my own family running, quietly, invisibly, paying the bills before shut-off notices appeared, buying groceries without saying I did, pretending the heat just fixed itself in January when the truth was I'd covered another overdue balance. We were all at the dining table that night, Dad, Thomas, Mom, Linda, and my kid brother Ryan, 17, still with that too big hoodie he hides in when the world feels loud. It was one of those rooms that holds your breath for you, the kind of calm that isn't really calm at all. The roast was carved. The mashed potatoes were steaming. Christmas music whispered from some forgotten playlist in the kitchen. No one spoke much. Forks tapped, water glasses clinked softly, time stretched. I'd been bracing for something, though I couldn't have told you what. Dad had been unusually quiet the past week, moving through the house like he was carrying a decision in his pocket. Mom watched him the way people watch a storm map. Ryan kept making jokes that didn't land. We'd just finished the main course. I reached for another spoonful of potatoes, and Dad set down his fork with a soft, final click. He looked at me like he'd been rehearsing it in the mirror. His face was fixed, no anger, no sadness, just a kind of cold I'd never seen on him before. You're a burden to this family. You can't live here anymore. The room went silent in a new way, as if sound itself had left. I must have misheard. That's what my brain did. Reached for the rational explanation, the clean label. Miscommunication. Wrong dosage. Try again. What? I asked, not trusting my voice. He didn't blink. You've overstayed your welcome, Hannah. It's time to move out. My fingers went numb around the serving spoon. I looked at Mom. She dropped her gaze to her plate like it might give her a script. She let out a shaky little laugh that didn't belong to her. Thomas, she whispered, maybe we should. He cut her off with a small shake of the head. Ryan had frozen mid-bite. His fork hovered in the air, eyes wide, confusion flooding his face before he masked it, too late. I saw the panic anyway. I swallowed, tasted metal. I don't understand. Dad's tone didn't change. You don't contribute the way you think you do. You're not needed here. It was so absurd I almost laughed. I was the reason the lights were on. I was the one who paid the internet when it mysteriously went up again. I covered gas money, groceries, the copay on Mom's blood pressure medication that Dad forgot to pick up. He hadn't held a steady job in, 3 years? 4. And every time a bill came due, I found a way to make it disappear, because that's what you do when you love people, right? You make the sharp edges round. But standing there with his words cutting through the ribboned warmth of the room, I felt something tear. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet rip inside, like paper giving way. You're serious, I said. He nodded once. Tomorrow morning would be best. Mom's breath hitched. She still wouldn't look at me. We'll talk about it, she murmured to the tablecloth. We can talk. No, Dad said. We won't. I placed the spoon down with care and folded my napkin like it mattered. I could hear my heart in my ears, a slow, heavy drum. 1,000 arguments spun up, lists of everything I'd done, every bill I'd paid, every night shift that ended with me staring at our bank app and choosing which problem to solve first. They formed, and then I let them go. If he could look me in the eye on Christmas Eve and call me a burden, he didn't want the truth. He wanted a villain. I could be that for him if it made this easier. I could be anything, actually, except theirs to use. I stood. The chair's legs scraped the floor, loud enough to feel like a threat. Okay, I said, and my voice surprised me. It sounded calm. Okay. Hannah, Mom started, a useless little hand reaching toward me, and then dropping. She had made the same motion when the heat went out last winter, like reaching might be enough, like intention counts on its own. Ryan's mouth opened and closed. Hannah, wait, you're not, he doesn't mean. He looked at Dad, searching for a clue that this was a joke gone wrong, a scene with a second take. But Dad's expression didn't flicker. I picked up my plate, carried it to the sink, turned on the water because it gave my hands something to do. My fingers shook anyway. I'll pack, I said to no one and everyone, and left the room. My bedroom door closed with a soft click that felt more final than any slammed door could. I pressed my back against it and slid down until I hit the floor. For a few seconds I just sat there with my knees pulled to my chest, counting inhalations like I was measuring out a controlled substance. 1, 2, 3. The nausea passed. The shaking didn't. I stood and scanned the room. Posters from college, a cheap string of fairy lights, a thrift dresser that stuck on the third drawer. A life built on small salvations and bigger denials. I grabbed my duffel from under the bed and started to pack. T-shirts, scrubs, jeans. The motion steadied me. Fold, stack, zip. Like filling med trays at the hospital, order in the middle of chaos. Downstairs, voices rose and fell. Mom's high, brittle tone. Dad's low and flat. A cabinet door slammed. I tuned it out. If I let their noise inside me right now, it would grow teeth. An hour later, a soft knock. Yeah, I said without looking up. The door cracked, and Ryan slipped through. He closed it behind him like he was hiding a crime. His eyes were red around the edges, his hoodie sleeves tugged over his hands. He sat beside me on the bed without asking, like he always had since he was little. What the hell just happened? He whispered, glancing at the door. Mom's freaking out and Dad's being Dad. I folded another shirt. You heard what he said. Yeah, but, he stopped. The word but was a whole paragraph he couldn't get out. He rubbed his palms on his jeans. You pay for everything, Han. The internet, the groceries, half the time you sneak cash into Mom's purse and pretend it's from her tips. How does he get to call you a burden? I stared at the drawer. He gets to because I let him, I said, the truth landing even as I said it. Because I've been fixing everything quietly so no one has to look at the mess. Because it's easier to say thank you for dinner than to ask why there's no plan. He swallowed hard. So, you're going? Tomorrow. His eyes went glassy. Where? I'll stay with Claire for a bit, I said. Figure it out from there. He shook his head like he could shake reality loose. You can't just leave. We, Mom and me, what are we supposed to do? I hated the way the question carved into me. You're not my responsibility, I said gently, and it sounded cruel even though it wasn't. Not like this. Not anymore. He stared at the floor. When he finally spoke, the words were small. Can I come with you? I had prepared for so many versions of this night, but not for that. He looked younger suddenly, the way he did when he was 10 and had nightmares about the dark space under his bed. You know they'd never allow it, I said, throat tight. And you're still in school. You have friends here. A team. A life. A life. He huffed a hollow sound that wasn't quite a laugh. We have a house where the lights go out when you're not here. I closed my eyes. If I looked at him too long, I'd say yes and then we'd both drown. I'll help you when I can, I said. But I can't stay. If I stay, nothing changes and I keep pretending, and you keep pretending, and he gets to keep being like this. I didn't say the word I was thinking. Cruel. Naming it would make everything real in a way I wasn't ready for. He nodded like it hurt. Then he curled sideways and put his head on my shoulder the way he hadn't since middle school. We sat like that for a long time without talking. Before he left, he wiped his eyes on his sleeve and said, "He's wrong about you." I smiled without teeth. I know. When the door closed again, the house returned to its strained quiet. I set an alarm for before dawn, because leaving in the early light felt safer, cleaner, like a surgical cut instead of a hack. I didn't sleep so much as count the seconds between 3 o'clock and 5 a.m. The alarm vibrated my nightstand, and I was already sitting up. I pulled on jeans and a hoodie, laced my shoes, lifted the duffel. On impulse, I grabbed the showbox under the bed where I keep everything important: passport, birth certificate, the emergency cash I never told anyone about because I learned the hard way that money has a way of disappearing in this house. I eased the door open. The hallway was dark. The house smelled like last night's food cooled into something faintly sour. On the way out, I paused by the living room. The tree's lights were off. An angel leaned crookedly at the top like even she was tired of pretending. I should have just left. But there was one more thing. In the kitchen, I opened the junk drawer, the one we call the everything drawer, where the mail goes to die. I pulled out the folder with the bills. I'd organized them months ago because chaos gives people excuses. Electric, gas, water, internet, cell phones. I took out my name from each account where I'd added myself because a customer service rep told me once, kindly, it'll be easier this way. I removed my autopay information, left sticky notes with the new due dates written in thick marker. You'd think it was petty. Maybe it was. But it was also survival. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-erasure. I set the folder back. On top, I placed the house key I'd carried since high school. Outside, the air bit at my lungs the way Denver air does when the sky is too clear to be kind. My old sedan coughed awake. As I pulled from the curb, the neighborhood was still sleeping, every window dark except the one across the street where Mrs. Alvarez always woke early to bake bread. She waved once, slow, like she knew. Maybe she did. Claire's apartment was on the other side of town near City Park, a third-floor walk-up that always smelled like coffee and basil because her roommate grew herbs on the windowsill and never stopped brewing anything. She opened the door in plaid pajama pants, hair knotted on top of her head, mascara smudged like she'd forgotten she wore it. "Wow," she said softly, taking in the bag in my hand and the way I was standing like a person who had decided not to fall. "Okay. Inside. Shoes off. Coffee first. Words after." I stepped in. The place was small and cluttered in the warm way where every object had a story. A cat I'd met once before and never liked decided I was a mountain and parked on my lap the moment I sat a day. The couch had springs that announced themselves, but it was a place to land, and that mattered more than comfort. I told her in pieces. She listened in whole. She swore a few times in creative ways that made me smile despite the rawness still scraping my insides. She handed me a blanket without asking if I was cold. "You can stay as long as you need," she said. "We'll figure it out. We always do." We. The word slid into my chest and warmed a place that had been cold for months. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Then again. Then 10 times. Mom. Ryan. An unknown number. I let them stack up like plates in a sink. Later, a text from Ryan that made my stomach drop. "They're freaking. Power's out. Internet's off. Dad's losing it. He's blaming you." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The thing about doing all the invisible work is that when you stop, people don't see the absence of your labor, they only see the inconvenience. They call it your fault. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you let yourself be a dam so long that when you step away, the flood looks like you're doing. Claire glanced over, reading my face instead of the phone. "Don't answer right now," she said. "You need a day where nothing is asked of you." I nodded and put the phone face down. Then I turned it off. We made a plan in the afternoon, not a perfect one, not even a good one yet, but a plan anyway. I'd pick up an extra shift at the hospital and start looking for a room to rent close enough to commute easily. Claire's roommate had opinions about how long a guest was still a guest, and I wasn't about to become the story I'd just left. By evening, exhaustion dragged at me like wet clothes. I lay on the couch with the blanket pulled to my chin and the cat kneading my shoulder mercilessly. The apartment hummed with small noises, the kettle rattling, the radiator chattering its old bones, the soft rise and fall of city life through the window. I wasn't happy. But I felt something close to relief. Like coming up for air after realizing you'd been underwater a long time. I must have drifted, because when my phone lit the room again, it was dark outside. The screen flashed with a fraud alert from my bank, suspicious login attempt detected. I sat up so fast the cat launched itself and landed offended on the armchair. I knew. Even before the second message arrived, I knew. My father had always treated other people's boundaries like locked doors he'd been dared to open. It didn't surprise me that the first thing he'd do when the power went out was try to crawl through my accounts. The next buzz was from Ryan. Think Dad was on the computer trying your bank tonight. He's pissed. Be careful. The anger that hit me wasn't hot, it was clean. A clarity. I changed every password, called the bank, put a freeze on anything that could be frozen. Then I sat very still in the dim light and felt my heartbeat steady itself. Across the room, Claire watched me over the rim of her mug. You're not going back, she said, not a question. No, I said. I'm not. Good, she said, and took another sip. I lay down again, pulled the blanket up, and turned my face toward the window where the city threw up a sky the wrong shade of black. For the first time in years, the door behind me felt closed in a way that didn't trap me. The future wasn't bright exactly, but it was mine. And somewhere between the kettle's low hiss and the radiator's muttering, a thought flickered, small and stubborn. This ends with me. He next morning tasted like metal and coffee. Claire left for an early shift, promising to text every hour like I was a patient she'd triage from afar. I showered in a bathroom the size of a closet, borrowed a towel that smelled like eucalyptus, and stared at my reflection long enough to recognize the look in my own eyes. Not fear anymore. Calculation. At noon I drove to the hospital to pick up an extra swing shift. Routine steadied me. Dispense, verify, label, double-check. The hum of fluorescent lights, the quiet negotiations between nurses and charts, the small, ordinary heroics of people who do their jobs well. My phone slept in my locker. I didn't need its noise. When I clocked out after midnight, the parking lot was a cold bowl of stars. I sat behind the wheel and breathed into my hands, watching the fog bloom against the windshield. The city felt both too big and too small at once, like I could disappear and be found in the same breath. A thin layer of frost had filmed my windows by the time I reached Claire's building. I killed the engine and listened. Winter has a sound, air sharpened to a whisper, distant sirens, one dog protesting the hour. I climbed the stairs slowly, keys ready, body already exhaling toward the couch and its treacherous springs. Halfway down the hall, I stopped. The door to Claire's apartment stood closed, but the floor in front of it held a small darkness, a shadow shaped wrong. Not a shadow. An envelope. Unmarked. No stamp. A neat, hard rectangle of silence sitting precisely on the cheap hallway carpet. I knew before I picked it up. A family has a handwriting even when it doesn't. Inside, a single page. Block letters, my father's imitation of authority. I exhaled through my nose and felt the world resize around me. The car was in my name. Bought with my money. Registered to my address. Facts, clean as a med list. But facts hadn't mattered last night and probably wouldn't now. I slid the note back into the envelope and tucked it into my jacket. I unlocked the door quietly and locked it again behind me. The apartment was dark except for the street lamp painting slow-moving trapezoids on the wall. The cat lifted its head from the armchair like a gatekeeper and decided I could pass. I didn't wake Claire. I didn't text anyone. I put the envelope in my bag like a specimen and lay down on the couch. The springs announced themselves. I closed my eyes. The knock came at 1:14 a.m. Not the polite kind. The kind that tries to make a point with your bones. The second knock was louder. The third rattled the frame. Claire sat up in her room, footsteps soft, then stopped. We both listened. The peephole is a stupid little theater stage, one person at a time, magnified. I looked. My father filled the circle of glass, large even at a distance, his breath fogging the cold air between door and face. Hannah, he said to the wood. Calm voice. Angry body. Open up. Claire appeared beside me in a sweatshirt and leggings, hair in a rope. Her eyes asked a question I didn't answer. She pointed at the chain lock. I nodded. He knocked again. 3 measured strikes. A judge calling court to order. You can't be here, I said through the door, and hated how even simple words shook in hallways. Go home. Return my keys, he said, as if we were playing a game of phrases. You stole my car. It's my car. Even to me, The sentence sounded like a child's answer, the kind that relies on the idea of fairness. Leave. Open the door, Hannah. I pictured the envelope, the block letters, the way he'd always loved declarations more than discussions. He liked his statements to stand alone. I took a breath that might have been a decision. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. Silence thickened. His face moved closer to the peephole, eye bulging larger than a face should hold. You'd call the cops on your own father? The absurdity of the word own punched something loose in me. Own father. Own daughter. Own car. Ownership used like a leash. I unhooked my phone from the charger. I'm calling now, I said. The hallway went very still except for Winter gossiping at the windows. He didn't knock again. He said, almost gently, you think they'll come fast enough? 911, I told the phone, because it needed to hear the number to become brave. Claire's hand lighted on my elbow, a quick, human grounding. When the dispatcher answered, my voice found a gear I'd never used. Clear. Specific. Location first, then threat, then relationship, then the verb, trying to force entry. Stay on the line, the woman said, the way only people who sit with other people's terror all night can say it. Units are on the way. Are you safe where you are? Yes, I said, and believed it enough to hold still. Through the peephole, his face shrank and grew with his breathing. He leaned in again, and in that strange fisheye circle I could see 1,000 moments layered behind his pupil. Him teaching me to ride a bike in a park that no longer had trees, him tipping bills out of my palm and telling me to hold the rest until Friday, him watching the Broncos with a beer and a silence that made the room smaller. Claire mouthed, back up, and I did. 2 steps. 3. The chain on the door looked like personality more than metal, thin, decorative, the kind you assume will hold because you've never truly asked it to. I hated it for that. Sirens grow differently when they're coming for you. They start as a rumor and turn into a promise. Blue and red side down the block, then grew impatient and loud. The flashing lights climbed the walls in slashes. He didn't run. Of course he didn't. Running implies admission, and my father collects denials like trophies. He smoothed his jacket, straightened his shoulders, and when the footsteps pounded up the stairs, he put both hands in the air like a reasonable man caught in an unreasonable scene. Evening, he said before the cops could speak. I'm here to get my property. The exchange was a script I barely heard, a language made of posture and policy. Sir, step back. Sir, whose name? Do you live here? Do you have a key? Are you safe? The dispatcher stayed on my phone until she could hear another voice say my name and you called, like it belonged in the same sentence. The hall filled with neighbors pretending not to watch. Doors cracked open. Eyes took inventory. A toddler cried 2 apartments down, confused by the lights. Do you want him trespassed? An officer asked me quietly. The question was a switch I didn't know existed. I looked at my father. He finally looked at me. His face was an arrangement I recognized too well, sorrow painted over contempt, hurt threaded through with anger, all of it designed to make me the cruel one. He shook his head once. A father in a holiday movie would have softened then. Mine doubled down. Return my keys, he said again, to the cop this time, as if the uniform might make a better ally. My daughter took my car. She's unstable. This is a family matter. My name is on the title, I said, handing over my registration with fingers that felt like someone else's. He doesn't live here. He's not welcome. The officer scanned the paper. He didn't look at my father again until he'd finished reading. Sir, I'm going to ask you to leave the property tonight. If you return, you can be arrested for trespassing. Do you understand? Something mean lit behind my father's eyes. He took a slow step forward and smiled at me. No teeth, all message. We'll talk tomorrow, he said. Like adults. I almost laughed, and maybe that saved me. A breath turned into a sound and cut the wire to fear. We won't, I said, and the words rang like a clean bell in a dirty room. They walked him downstairs without touching him, which almost felt worse. Running footsteps echoed, then faded. The stairwell swallowed him. The lights dimmed. One neighbor shut a door with the tiny dramatic flourish of someone who'd waited all year for a front row seat. "Do you want an emergency protective order?" the officer asked, voice back to logistics. My mouth said yes before my brain listed reasons. He gave me a card with an address and a time, told me how judges work on holidays, how paper can sometimes hold back a person if that person still believes paper is real. I signed my name on a form that printed it twice. They left. The hallway sighed back into night. Claire exhaled so hard her ponytail fell apart. "We're getting a real deadbolt tomorrow," she said. "And a camera. I don't care if the landlord sets himself on fire about it." We laughed, the kind of laugh you only get after nothing terrible happened, and it easily could have. Sleep found me in pieces. Every small noise sat me upright, heartbeat sprinting. In the grey that feels like morning's throat clearing, I dreamed my phone was a fish and kept leaping out of my hands. When sun finally admitted itself through the blinds, I felt like I'd done a day's work already. The courthouse was glass and winter light and the wrong kind of air conditioning. I filled out more forms with boxes too small for the facts of a family. A clerk with a bun pulled so tight it made my scalp ache read my statement silently, eyes moving in tiny jumps like a sparrow's. "Judge will call your name," she said, and nodded toward a bench. When it was my turn, the judge looked younger than my father. He asked questions that made sense. "Did he threaten you? Did he try to enter? Did you tell him to leave?" I answered like I was reciting a medication guide. Precise. Boring. Boring is good when you're asking for protection. He signed. The clerk stamped. Paper turned into an order that said, in the clipped magic of law, no contact, no approach, no exceptions. We walked back into cold that bit the cheeks and felt like honesty. On the drive home, my phone vibrated itself across the passenger seat like a trapped insect. I let it. At a red light, I glanced down. Unknown number. Unknown again. Ryan. I answered on the third ring. "I'm okay," I said before he could ask. He didn't waste time. "Dad's losing it," he whispered. I could hear the house in the background. Somewhere a cabinet door banged in patterns that weren't cooking. The power came back on because Mom borrowed from Aunt Teresa, but the internet's still dead and he says that's your fault, and he thinks you called the cops to make him look bad. He made himself look bad, I said, and hated how small comfort sounds when you talk to someone still inside the fire. "He's saying he'll get you evicted," Ryan rushed on. "He says he knows people. Hannah, he doesn't know people. He barely knows the password to Netflix." I pulled over in front of a coffee shop I couldn't afford this week and put my forehead on the steering wheel for a second. "Listen to me," I said. "There's a protective order. If he comes to Claire's again, the police will arrest him. If he tries to pull anything at the hospital, I've already told security. You are not responsible for keeping him calm. You hear me?" Silence, then a small, tired yeah. "And Ryan?" "What?" "If he gets in your face, go to your room and lock the door. Call me. Or call 911. You don't have to stand there and absorb it." A shaky inhale. "Okay." We hung up. I stared at the coffee shop door until my breath matched the rhythm of people coming and going in coats too thin for honest weather. I told myself the worst had crested. That's what bodies do after a scare, decide the peak has passed. Then they get surprised. At lunch, Claire and I installed a new deadbolt the landlord would absolutely notice and an entry camera we swore to take down when we left. We ate peanut butter on toast because groceries were a Tuesday problem. We made jokes about Home Alone and pretended we hadn't practiced dialing 911 in our heads. By late afternoon, I forced myself to do normal things. I updated my resume, sent 2 inquiries to room rentals that had more photos of succulents than rooms, filled out a request for more hours at the hospital. I folded my duffel like I might need to leave fast again and hated the way that felt normal. At 6:03 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize but had learned to fear. "You have until tomorrow to bring the car back. Consider this your last warning. T." I blocked the number. It's a small courage, the digital kind, but some days it's the only kind you get to practice. At 7:19, Ryan texted, "Mom's crying. She says you've ruined Christmas. Dad told her you emptied the accounts." He's lying, but she believes him when he says it loud enough. I typed and erased 3 replies before sending. I love you. None of this is your fault. If you need a ride anywhere, text me the address. At 8:01, another text from Ryan. He's on your laptop. A beat later, wait. No. He's trying. Password's not working and he's losing it. He doesn't quit, Claire said, reading over my shoulder. He only escalates. He escalates until he hits a wall, I said, and tried to believe I could be one. At 9:40, the entry camera sent its first notification, motion detected. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I'd stand up to catch it. We looked together at the little square of the world outside our door. Not my father. My mother. She stood alone in a puffy coat, hands jammed in pockets like she couldn't trust them not to tremble. Her hair was pulled back the way she wore it when she needed to appear collected. She looked at the door, then at the lens, as if addressing an audience she couldn't see. She knocked, gentle, 3 almost embarrassed taps. I swallowed. If I open it, he's somewhere waiting around the corner, I said. Claire nodded. Or she came because she's the messenger. The camera picked up her breath as a small ghost in the cold. She glanced down the hall and back, and when she spoke, we could almost hear it. Please. I didn't move. The cat hopped onto the back of the couch like the house had a front row again. Another knock, soft. Then she slipped something under the door, a second envelope, and walked away quickly, like she'd broken a rule. I waited until the stairwell swallowed her to open it. Inside, a note in my mother's actual handwriting this time, the loops and pauses I'd learned to read as a child. It was 3 lines long. Hannah, I'm sorry. He won't listen. I can't stop him. Please call me. No knives. No demands. No blame. 3 small sentences like stones laid across water, trying to equal a bridge. I folded the paper and put it back, unbroken. Not tonight, I said to the quiet room, to the camera, to my own impulse to fix the thing screaming to be fixed. Claire poured 2 mugs of tea we didn't drink. We watched a show where nothing bad happens to anyone and turned it off because that felt like a lie too big for this apartment. Near midnight, my phone lit again. Ryan. He took your spare key from the hook. He said you don't deserve the car. He left. I don't know where he went. Claire and I looked at each other. The kind of look that understands and refuses at once. Cameras, locks, papers, she said. He'll test every door until one opens. He won't test this one again tonight, I said, and hoped saying a thing out loud could warn the universe to obey. I set the phone face down, waited for my pulse to learn it could slow, and let the couch take my weight. The cat decided I was furniture worth keeping. When sleep finally came, it brought a dream where I stood in a field of doors, each one marked with a different year. I opened one at random and found a kitchen lit by December. My father sat at the table unraveling a roll of duct tape, careful, methodical, smiling. Behind him, a window looked out on snow that wasn't cold. I woke at 3:06 with the shorty of someone who has remembered something important. People don't become storms overnight. They practice. They learn where the walls bend. My phone vibrated again. A new message. Not from Ryan. Not from Mom. Not a number I recognized. We need to talk about the title on the car, Ms. Parker. This is Officer Kenner. Please call me when you get this. A police officer texting at 3 a.m. is either a wrong number or a story starting. I stared at the glow until it hurt, thumb hovering over the call button, and felt the next wave climbing wherever waves are born. The message burned into the screen long after it went dark. A police officer, at 3 in the morning, wanting to discuss the title on my car. My first thought was scam. My second was worse. Dad had managed to pull someone official into his orbit. I didn't call back. Not at night. Not when my pulse was still a hammer. I slid the phone under the pillow like a child hiding a monster under blankets. Sleep didn't come back. At dawn, I brewed coffee that tasted like scorched hope and waited for the world to turn itself on. Claire shuffled out of her room, hair matted, eyes swollen with fatigue. She poured half the pot into a mug and squinted at me. You didn't sleep. Not really. I slid the phone across the table so she could see the text. She frowned, then shook her head. That's not how officers talk. They don't text at 3 a.m. They call. They show up. That's him, Hannah. He's pretending. Relief came sharp and short-lived. You're right. But my stomach didn't loosen. If he was pretending to be a cop, what else was he ready to pretend? I went to work that afternoon, heavy-eyed but steady enough. In between filling prescriptions, I kept checking my phone. Nothing new from him. Only a message from Ryan around 2, Mom says you should just come home and fix things. She says Dad will calm down if you apologize. Apologize. The word landed like a punch I'd already taken too many times. When I didn't answer, he followed with, she's packing boxes. Says if you're not coming back, she's selling what's left. The air left my lungs. My laptop, my books, the pieces of myself I hadn't grabbed in the rush to leave, it was all still in that house. And if Mom had decided it was fair game, then I was about to lose what little I had left. I left the hospital an hour early, adrenaline overriding duty. Claire met me at the door when I got back. She read my face before I spoke. You're going, she said. Not a question. I have to, I admitted. If I wait, there won't be anything left. She grabbed her coat. Then we go together. The drive back to my parents' neighborhood felt like entering enemy territory. The house looked the same, white siding, crooked mailbox, a wreath still clinging to the door, but everything inside was different now. I parked across the street. My heart raced with the old memory of curfews, slammed doors, lectures. Claire put her hand on mine. You don't go in alone. Inside, the smell hit first. Pine from the tree, but sour, like it had lingered too long. Boxes were stacked by the stairs. My boxes. Labeled with black marker in Mom's handwriting, clothes, books, Misk. She stood in the living room, arms crossed, face unreadable. You shouldn't have come. It's my stuff. I kept my voice level. You left it. That makes it ours now. The logic twisted, brittle but sure in her tone. Claire stepped forward. That's not how ownership works. Mom ignored her. You walked out, Hannah. You made your choice. We can't live in limbo while you decide if you're family or not. Selling my things doesn't fix that, I said, moving toward the boxes. My laptop wasn't there. My gut sank. Where is it? Her lips tightened. Your father's using it. The anger flared hot and fast. Give it back. You think you can just demand things, she snapped, voice rising for the first time. After what you did to this family. After you humiliated your father, had him dragged out like a criminal. He tried to break into my apartment, I shot back. My voice shook but grew louder. That wasn't humiliation. That was reality. Her cheeks flushed. For a second, I thought she might hit me. Instead, she turned away. Take what you can carry. Then leave. Don't come back. I grabbed everything within reach, clothes, papers, a box of keepsakes I'd hidden in the closet. Claire hauled 2 boxes to the car. We moved quickly, afraid of footsteps on the stairs. When I returned for the last load, Mom blocked the door. She dangled something between her fingers. A key. You don't deserve this, she said. My car key. Give it to me. Her hand closed into a fist. It's ours. You drove it off this property, but it belongs to this family. We need it more than you do. I stood very still. If you don't hand me that key, I'm calling the police again. Right now. Her eyes flickered, rage meeting fear. For a heartbeat, I saw the truth. She didn't believe the words she was saying, not fully. She was too tired, too desperate, too loyal to a man who'd pulled her down for years. She threw the key. It hit the floor, skidded against the tile. I picked it up. I didn't look back. Not when she called my name. Not when she shouted something about betrayal. Not when Ryan's face appeared at the top of the stairs, pale and stricken. Outside, the air felt sharper, freer. I loaded the last box into the trunk, slid behind the wheel, and turned the ignition. The engine hummed. Mine. As we pulled away, Claire asked softly, "You okay?" I gripped the wheel tighter. I'm done. That's what I am. Done. The weight on my chest lifted as the house shrank in the rearview mirror. But some part of me knew, this wasn't over. Not yet. The days after felt like walking through fog, but lighter than the fog I'd carried for years. I moved into a small sublet near the hospital, one room, peeling paint, radiator that moaned at night, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, the silence felt strange. No arguing downstairs. No footsteps pacing the hallway. Just quiet. I changed every password, every PIN, froze my credit. I learned how many ways someone can try to reach you when they've lost control. Blocked numbers multiplied. Unknown callers left voicemails filled with silence, then with rage, then with desperate pleas. Come back. Fix this. We can't do this without you. I didn't answer. Ryan texted sometimes, short bursts that felt like messages smuggled out of a war zone. Dad's furious. Mom says it's your fault. They can't pay the bills. He's blaming you for everything. Every time, guilt pricked me like needles. But then I'd remember, they had chosen this. They had pushed me out. They had tried to take even more. And if I'd stayed, nothing would have changed. One night, Ryan called instead of texting. His voice cracked through the line. They lost the house. My chest tightened. What do you mean? The bank took it. Mom's freaking out. Dad's drinking more than ever. They're blaming you. Saying if you hadn't left, none of this would have happened. I closed my eyes. Ryan, listen to me. This was going to happen anyway. I just stopped covering it up. Silence. Then, softly, I know. I wish you were still here. Tears stung my eyes. I love you. But I can't go back. The call ended, but his words stayed. They always stayed. Weeks passed. My father tried once more, showed up outside my building, shouting until the landlord threatened to call the police. After that, nothing. A strange stillness. And in that stillness, I started to breathe again. I picked up more shifts, saved enough to buy new furniture. I hung fairy lights in the corner, framed photos that weren't tied to family chaos. Me and Claire at a street fair, co-workers at a holiday party, even Ryan when he visited one weekend, and we spent hours just walking through the city, free for once. One Saturday, Claire dragged me to a dinner party. You need to meet people who don't come with police reports, she joked. That's where I met Ethan, a chef planning to open a health-focused restaurant. We talked for hours about food as medicine, about building something that heals instead of just fills. He asked if I'd help consult, use my knowledge of pharmacy to craft menus for people with chronic conditions. For the first time in a long time, I felt excitement instead of dread. The months turned into a rhythm. Work, side project with Ethan, evenings in my own space. My shoulders felt lighter. My laughter came back in pieces, then in whole. Then came the letter. Slipped under my apartment door, just like before. My mother's handwriting this time, shaky. Hannah, your father is gone. He left. I don't know where. I can't do this alone. Please forgive me. Please come home. I sat on the floor, the letter trembling in my hand. Old reflexes screamed at me. Go back, fix it, save her. But another voice, quieter, stronger, reminded me of all the nights I had been the only glue holding broken pieces together. Reminded me of every insult, every manipulation, every betrayal. I folded the letter once, then again, and placed it in the drawer with the others. I didn't call. Because home isn't always where you came from. Sometimes it's what you build when you finally break free. That Christmas, 1 year later, I stood in my tiny apartment, fairy lights glowing, laughter filling the room. Claire was there. Ethan was there. A handful of new friends, people who saw me for who I was, not what I could provide. We raised glasses of cheap champagne. I looked around the room, and for the first time in my life, I felt something close to peace. I wasn't their burden. I was never their burden. I was free.